Connected Homeschooling, Episode 7.
Welcome to the Connected Homeschooling Podcast, where we connect homeschooling families like yours with leaders, authors, speakers, and all-around interesting people who provide great conversations, tips, and advice. Now here's your host, Devin Dabney.
Hi guys, and thank you for joining me for this episode of Connected Homeschooling. This week I've got something very special for you, and I know as a homeschooling family, one thing that we like is when we're able to get something that's of high value for absolutely free. Well, this week I'm interviewing Lee Giles of the Peasy All-in-One Homeschool. We talk about her homeschooling journey, and we also talk about her website, Peasy All-in-One Homeschool. So stay tuned, and you'll get great value from this interview. Without further ado, here's our interview with Lee Giles. She's a wife, mother, a writer, and she also operates a very valuable website called Peasy All-in-One Homeschool. My guest for today's podcast is Lee Giles. Lee, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Devin.
I'm very excited to have you on the show today, and I know this is a resource that will benefit and bless many families. So at the beginning of each show, what we do is have our guests share some background information and just help us connect with them and with who they are as a person. So why don't you just take a few minutes and introduce yourself to our audience, and then we'll start back up after that.
Okay, I'll try. My name's Lee, and I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I'm there right now, staying with my parents in the home I grew up in, because our family is home on furlough. We serve the Lord overseas, and we've been overseas for the last 11 years. So that defines much of who I am right now. But I am also a wife of almost 16 years, and I have 6 children. My oldest is my only daughter, who's 13, and then I have 5 boys after that. The youngest is still a babe. So my home is full and loud and noisy, but we have a lot of fun. I don't know what else I can share with you. We've been homeschooling from the start. I always say I homeschooled from birth. So homeschooling has definitely always been part of our family.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that. And we'll definitely get more into your story of homeschooling in a moment. Now, I've asked you to prepare for us a scripture or something that would be encouraging to our audience. And why don't you share that scripture with us?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind was Proverbs 14:4. It's something the Lord used to encourage me one day when I was feeling discouraged over my home. And it's, where no oxen are, the manger is clean, but much revenue comes by the strength of the ox. Might seem like an unusual verse, but if you can picture a big empty barn and it's perpetually clean because there's no animals there and it doesn't smell and it's peaceful and quiet, but there's no profit. And that's the opposite of my home. My home is never perpetually clean, certainly. And it's noisy and it's sometimes smelly, but there's blessing in it. Choosing to have my kids home with me 24/7, basically. My children are blessed in every way, emotionally, spiritually, physically, academically, everything. There's so much blessing in embracing the dirty manger.
That's great, and I've never thought of that scripture in that context, and it makes a whole lot of sense, and I believe that's something that will encourage families that may be listening. Now, thank you so much for sharing that scripture, and what we'll do right now is just jump into your homeschooling story. You mentioned your children and be able to have them at home and homeschooling them. Was this something that was passed down to you, or how did you even get started with homeschooling?
My father was a public school teacher, my mother stayed home with us, but we were sent to public school. And when I was a teenager, I asked her to homeschool me, but she said no way. I was too stubborn. And she went back to teaching when we were in high school. So both my parents are teachers. But I knew from the time I got married that I wanted to homeschool. Before we had children, we knew that that's what we wanted to do. And my parents were skeptical as teachers. But my daughter was an eager reader, very well spoken at 2 years old, and started to learn to read very young. And they were so proud and impressed by her that homeschooling became accepted very quickly in my family.
Wow.
But I used to always say that I homeschooled easy when I would talk to people about it. In Pennsylvania, they're not required to go to school until 8, so I didn't worry about trying to follow any kind of guidelines. I just focused on the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. And basically, we had 2 subjects. We would do math, and then we would read. And we would read about history or science. So that was just all put together with the English. And then somewhere reading, I would have them find nouns or have them write a sentence about it or whatever. So I kept it very easy. And as they started getting older, my oldest was 8, and I had to follow guidelines. All of a sudden, you got more and more organized each year at that point. And it all sort of comes into how Easy Peasy developed, how our homeschool developed at that point. I don't know if you want me to go into that story yet.
Well, we're going to talk about Easy Peasy in a moment. And I'm glad you mentioned, it seems like the more I talk to homeschooling families, the more I start to see some of the similarities. It seems like many of us who are homeschooling parents actually come from families where we actually had educators as parents or people that are teaching in the public schools. I know that that's actually my story. My mom taught and is now retired from public schools, and I went to public schools. And so I'm just starting to see that more and more with my guests, and as I talk to different families, that many of us come from those backgrounds, but we're also excelling in our homeschooling journey. And so what were some of the challenges? I'm assuming that's probably one of the challenges that you may have faced in the beginning, just possibly having to prove yourself, or people wondering if this is a good option, especially if they've been involved in the public or private schools. What were some of the challenges you've had with homeschooling?
Well, I went into homeschooling full of confidence. Probably got less confidence the more I went into it. If you look at my, website, I'm an organized person. I'm a planner. I have it all laid out. And, when my first was an infant, I was planning out her preschool curriculum. And as I said, she was an early talker and an early reader, and it was all for naught. By the time she was old enough to do it, she knew that easy stuff. And so I learned at that point not to, get too ahead of myself, to just, let the kids take the lead, let them ask questions, and let them learn. It was the thing that got harder for me was when I had to leave that I felt like I had to leave that kind of mindset as they got old enough to have to follow the guidelines of the state, and we had to turn in paperwork and show what we were doing and, get approval from the state and things like that, and they're going to be tested, and then all of a sudden, is this enough? Am I covering everything? And start looking around what's everyone else doing, and went through that phase until I realized my kids were doing great, and I didn't have to worry about it, and my Easy Peasy school was sufficient. They excelled on their state tests, and I didn't have to be worrying about it, and have left behind trying to see what everyone else is doing, and and now get to, try and share that with other parents to just relax and try and enjoy it, because if your kids can enjoy it, then it'll be more profitable.
Well, that's great. Now, you mentioned, you said you have 6 children?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, many of our listeners probably fall into one of these categories where some of the homeschooling families tend to have large families. I know that we're actually expecting our 6th child right now. And so with such a large family and doing homeschooling, how do you balance your time amongst your children with doing the homeschooling task?
Well, that's part of how I have our school set up now, that our kids work pretty independently. People are amazed at what I've been able to accomplish, but I'm amazed at the mothers who, create a box for their toddlers, and they change it every day, and it's new and exciting, and they sit quietly and play while they teach their other children, and that's not what my family looks like. I have my older children, working independently so I can be with the baby and the toddler, and we do as much as we can at nap time. That's always been school time for us. We don't do school first thing in the day. We wait till nap time to do school. And, while my kids are doing school, I'm with the baby, or I'm cooking, or I'm taking a nap myself, and then they have to check in with me, and I go over their work and send them back to do it again, or give them a high five, So, I don't know if I balance it all. I'm not trying to do everything at once. That's how I have it set up, so that we keep functioning. And I have it set up so they can work independently, because before I had it all set up, there's a day where you say, I don't have anything ready, go sit and read for an hour. So I don't have to do that anymore. School's never skipped because I have it prepared for them.
And I think that's part of the beauty of being a homeschooling family. You do have that flexibility of saying, well, maybe we'll do school after nap time, or we can adjust our schedule as needed because of what we have going on as a family. I really enjoy that. Now, one of the big questions that always arises, especially from critics of homeschooling families, is what about socialization? I'm sure you probably had people ask you about that. What do you say to the person that's saying, what about socialization for your kids?
Well, I don't think they know what they're asking, because if you read the research, what socialization is what you learn from the ages of 0 to 5, and what the research shows is that the more time you spend with your parents from the age of 0 until 5, the less likely you are to have all sorts of troubles as teenagers, etc. It's how you learn to just react to those around you, and that's what they learn when they're little, when they're looking up and watching you, when you don't even realize it, and copying how you interact, how you respond. No one you don't send your kids to school because you want them to talk, and they're not supposed to talk in class,
Exactly.
That's not why you send them to school. That's what you do after school. It's what you do on the weekends, and it's what we get to do more of because we're freer.
Okay. Well, we've talked about your homeschooling journey, and I guess the last question in this portion of the interview is, does your family participate in any type of co-ops or extracurricular activities?
Well, only when we're in America. Right now we're going to a local homeschool co-op because we have the chance to. Other than that, our only group is, the local church.
Okay.
And other families that we just visit, not as homeschoolers, just other families we get together with. My kids are not in extracurricular activities. I've never signed them up for anything. I did a lot of that when I was young. We try and keep our family together, not spread out in every which way. And we believe in letting our children find their own passion. And my oldest right now is 13. She's the first one to do anything outside the home. She's an artist, and she got the opportunity she got asked to be an apprentice to an artist who noticed her work. So she gets to go do that, which is an amazing opportunity. And the Lord just provided it out of a chance encounter. So we're not trying to build up any resumes for our children. We're letting them spend time on the things they enjoy and then waiting on the Lord to see what the next step is for each of those things. So right now my daughter's the only one who does anything apart from the family.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about Easy Peasy. You mentioned earlier that some of the origins of that and just how you were doing some schoolwork, or you had a time before you had developed and organized this whole system, but maybe there's someone out there that is listening to this and they've never heard of Easy Peasy. How would you describe it, and I guess what exactly is Easy Peasy All-in-One Homeschool?
Well, there's a long story to how it got developed. But the nutshell is, this is my children's school. It's their schoolwork. I've put their assignments online. It says day one, and here are your assignments, and it's written so that anyone can use it. It covers all the grade levels. It covers all the subjects. It's, English is, reading, writing, grammar, spelling, vocabulary. There's math and science and history and even Bible and computer. There's thinking school, art and music, even PE and health. It just has all the subjects in there so that nothing gets missed. My kids get on every day and go to whatever day they're on, and they just read the assignments, follow the directions, and anyone can use it. And it's set up so that all your children can study the same history and science together. So you don't have to lose that kind of togetherness that homeschoolers enjoy and that we enjoyed before we got to this point. But it's developed into a full pre-K up through high school curriculum. It's intended to be college preparatory as well. And the other thing is that it's totally free curriculum. All the resources are free. You only have to, buy paper and pencil, a few science experiment supplies if you're interested. And it's just available for everyone.
That's amazing, and it's actually when I discovered this resource, I was just so surprised that there was so much value there, and it was completely organized, and that it was absolutely free. Like you mentioned, maybe if you want to buy some paper and pencils, or even if you wanted to print out some of the materials, then you have that option. But, if you really wanted to just go through some of these materials, I noticed that if you're covering a certain, say, letter of the alphabet, and if there's a link to some type of reading, then you're just linking to another website or somewhere that has the materials there. And so it's not like you have to have this whole printed out curriculum or anything.
You'll never print out a whole workbook or a whole textbook or anything like that.
And I like just being able to go to, if there's a song that you can sing about the letter A, then you can just click on that and go right to the song. So it's amazing to me, just the value that you provide, and just thinking about some of the listeners who may be a brand new family to homeschooling. It's overwhelming when you think about all the different curriculum choices and the options that are available to you. But I think as someone who would probably be just starting out, or even having a young child that may not be, quote, school age, for them to just start at the beginning and just see where their child can learn. And it's really a great resource.
That's been the most surprising thing to me, because when I started, I had in my mind people who didn't have the money or the time to homeschool, and I had a specific person in mind. I was hearing stories of people's husbands were losing their jobs and they didn't know if they were going to be able to continue homeschooling, and I really wanted to help those families But what I've discovered is that there's this huge group of people that just didn't feel like they could homeschool. It wasn't about the time or money. They just didn't know what to do. And they can go to the site and says, day one, do this, and they love that. It tells them exactly what to do. And a lot of people, I get letters every day saying they're pulling their kids out of public school because now they feel like they can homeschool, and it's been really amazing. It's something I didn't expect when it was first starting.
Yeah, I think that really this is a ministry for you, and we talked about even during this interview, you were just talking about your heart behind it, and that you didn't want, I guess, a barrier there where someone has to pay for the materials. That is something that you've used, and I think it's been probably more of a blessing than you realize, because there are so many people that you get online and someone is posing a question to a person who maybe has been a veteran homeschooling mom or someone who's very involved, and they say, well, I'm interested in doing it, but I don't really know how. I want to pull my kids out of public school or private school. I want to bring them home, to point them to your website, and then they can get started right away and get started. I just think that's really a ministry in itself. It really just allows people to get started with little time and really with no money if they have access to the internet. And that's something that even with my younger children, we're going to be going through, taking a lesson at a time, and that allows me as a dad to say, okay, we're utilizing these different resources, and maybe while mom is doing this particular program with them or doing something on easy curriculum, and it helps take the weight off of me because I don't have to necessarily do that as my part. So I really appreciate that. And I was going to ask the last question as far as what has been the greatest reward of just starting this whole process with Easy Peasy.
The greatest reward is just being connected with people all over the world now. Where we live overseas, I'm the only American woman in the city. There are other believers. There's other Christian women, but they're all from all different countries, and people write to me all the time saying they're praying for us, and it's been just amazing having all these, supporters, encouragers, people on my side. So that, to me, just because of our life situation, we just moved to a new city like a few years ago, and so I was new to another new place again, starting all over, meeting people and making friends, and now all of a sudden I have a fan club, which was never expected.
Well, that's great. And the last thing we'll do here, I do a segment on each episode called 7 with Devin, and it's somewhat of a lightning round where I'll just kind of give you some questions and you just give me your best answer. And I guess the first one would be, why do you homeschool? You mentioned earlier just how you got involved with it and that you just knew you would do it. What is it that motivates you to homeschool?
I don't remember now my first time making that decision, but now I just can't imagine not being with my children. I wanted them to be with me.
Okay. Well, that's great, and that's what many people say. They get to know their children so much better because they are at home with them. And next question here is, if you were able to start your homeschooling journey over, what would be your first step?
Not planning out preschool for an 8-month-old. I would have
think you were
relaxed. I would have relaxed
ambitious,
from the beginning and taken my time.
Okay. Now, we've been talking about homeschooling, and in many cases, like I mentioned earlier, as a dad, I'd like to be involved. What's your best advice for dads in homeschooling family?
Stay calm. Stay supportive. Don't reinforce the doubts about is it enough? Are they doing okay? Are we making it? Just spend time with your kids and see for yourself how they're doing. And if you see a gap, then volunteer to spend the extra time reading or going over the math or taking them on a nature walk, wherever you can just step in and fill in any gaps that you see instead of questioning why they're there or if this is working or,
Okay. Now, two questions that kind of go together. What has been your greatest reward, and then what has been your greatest challenge with homeschool?
I don't know how to answer that. The greatest reward is all of it. I love having our family together. I love having all day together, getting to go places together during the day, going on walks every day. I love that my kids have time to do what they love, doing art or computer or music. The different kids each have their own thing that they spend their time on that they can, because I give them the time to do that because they're home and not doing a million other things and being out for 8 hours a day at school. And I can't pick one thing. The greatest challenge is almost the same thing, being together all the time. You're responsible for it all, and you have to give it over to the Lord, or it's too much of a responsibility to turn out the perfect adult that you dream of.
Yeah, and I think you answered my next question. Actually, I was going to ask, how do you overcome it? And you definitely mentioned just turning it over to the Lord. I think that's key, because if you try to do it in yourself, you definitely have those doubts or feel that you're not capable of doing it. And so I definitely agree with you there. And the last question in this segment is, what's a unique talent or characteristic about you that most people might not know?
Something about me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I used to always call myself a jack of all trades and master of none. Like I said, I was put in lots of activities. I did all of it. And I was good at everything. But I was good at the state level. I was never great at the national level. And, I was good, but I never had my one thing that I see developing in my children. And it wasn't until this past year with seeing what has happened with this curriculum that I've looked back and realized that this is a gift that I have, putting information into outlines, making a plan, putting it into outline form, and I can remember people complimenting me at different times in my life on how well I could make this outline and put this plan into an outline and make it into just complimenting my writing skills, that they were talking about these outlines I had made for a group. And so I just learned that about myself, that I do have an extra special talent that the Lord's given me. And it's being able to organize this and by the Lord's hand.
Wow. Now, and we actually get the benefit from that, and so that's really a great talent for you to have. So we thank you for that. Now, each week we highlight a resource that our guests can go and check out, and this week there's really no need to highlight anything else except Easy Peasy All-in-One Homeschool. And so I just invite everyone that's listening to stop by the site, check out the resources that are there. You can look at the grade level for your child and just see the materials that are there, and you can really view all of it. Now, what are the grade levels that you have posted there?
It starts with pre-K, and we just launched a high school site in August, so the high school site's not complete yet, but there's courses there for every grade level.
Okay. Now, the last thing we'll do here is just share with our listeners the best ways to get in contact with you.
Well, the best way is to go to the site. It's allinonehomeschool.com, and from there you can join our Facebook community, which is where we encourage people to go and ask questions. There's too many for me to answer everyone now, like I did at the beginning. And my email is also on the site, too, if someone needs to contact me.
Okay, so it's all-in-one-homeschool.com.
Yep.
And also, All-in-One Homeschool is on Facebook as well.
Yep, on the site there's a link to get to our Facebook page.
Okay. Well, Lee, thank you so much for being a guest on the Connected Homeschooling podcast. And I know that many of our listeners will be blessed by what you've shared and also by your website. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on this episode of the Connected Homeschooling podcast. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Lee Giles of the Easy Peasy All-in-One Homeschool. And if you want to check out their resource, visit allinonehomeschool.com. And you can get started right away. There's absolutely no cost to start utilizing the site. I also invite you to visit her Facebook page. You can do a search for Easy Peasy Homeschool or All-in-One Homeschool on Facebook. And you should be able to find her page there, and you'll find Lee there and also other homeschoolers who are utilizing that curriculum. And so it's a great support system, and you can find out some of the tools and tricks and what people are doing to integrate this into their homeschool studies. If you'd like to connect with us on Facebook, feel free to visit facebook.com/connectedhomeschooling. And we're also active on Twitter at twitter.com/connectedhsing. We didn't have an additional resource of the week this week because this is such a great resource. We want to encourage you to visit the allinonehomeschool.com website and just let us know what you think about it. I'm sure Lee would love to hear from you. And if you'd like the show notes for this episode, you can find it at connectedhomeschooling.com/episode 7. I'd love to get your feedback there. You can leave your comments and questions at connectedhomeschooling.com/episode 7. Tune in next week for another encouraging, inspiring, and educational episode where we'll provide you with the tools and resources that you need to make your homeschooling success. Take care and be blessed.